Hello, it's Donut, and in this video, I'm going to explain the drift structure in KartRider Drift. Because Season 1 includes console support, I'll be using controller with the default controls for this video. In the B2 license test, this list of inputs that looks like a fighting game combo is displayed. This is pretty much the basic drift structure for KartRider and can be applied at all turns. In KartRider, the type of drift you do is determined by how long buttons are held down and when they are released. This is what this drift looks like. This long drift I just did is called a full drift, and the small boost at the end is called an instant boost. Let's go through these inputs and briefly go over what each one does for our drift. Accelerate by default is the right trigger. We need to hold accelerate to gain speed. With speed, we can do long drifts to build nitro. Throughout the entire drift, make sure you're holding down accelerate or you'll mess up. If you have auto acceleration on, then you don't need to worry about that. By default, the left analog stick is used to turn left or right. Drifting should always be done with respect to a direction. Generally, before drifting, we want to briefly hold down the direction we want to go first. This is called pre-turning. You can learn about why you pre-turn in this video. In this case, we briefly hold left before doing a left drift. We start a drift by pressing the drift button and left or right at the same time. The drift button not only starts the drift, but also determines how curvy the drift is. Holding it longer will allow you to perform really tight drifts like a U-turn. Make sure to hold the direction and the drift button at the same time. In a real race, we only want to hold the drift button long enough to complete a turn. So it's important to know when to release the drift button and the direction. This display only tells you to release the drift button, but you should actually release the drift button and the direction. Remember, the drift button determines how curvy drifts are, so we don't actually want to hold it forever. For a basic drift, do not press the drift button and direction again after releasing them. Also, don't hold the drift button and press left and right like this. This is not Mario Kart. In KartRider, when you release the drift button, you are throwing the cart in a direction determined by how long you held the drift input. If we don't do anything now, we'll keep drifting sideways for a while like this. Countersteer during a drift by pressing the opposite direction. This will turn the cart the opposite way and end the drift sooner. When the drift ends, release accelerate and press it again to do an instant boost. Instant boosts can only be done after ending a full drift, not small drifts. To ensure you do full drifts consistently, make sure you have speed and make sure you pre-turn before drifting. If you have auto acceleration on, the accelerate button becomes your instant boost button. Another reason to not mash the drift button and direction is because your instant boost won't work consistently. When learning, focus on pressing one time only. Let's use this information to try to pass the Instant Boost challenge in the B1 license. In the introduction, I mentioned the type of drift you do is determined by how long buttons are pressed and released. For this challenge, we need to hold them in a way to do full drifts that end quickly. The order of the inputs is the same as before, except in this case, we want to pre-turn a little longer, press the drift button for less time by tapping it lightly, and countersteer early. You'll notice that some of these drifts are quite small, but I'm still getting instant boosts. The trick is to make sure you get the kart to face about a 30-degree angle when drifting. You get a small angle before the drift begins with the pre-turn. Then, tap the drift button to start the drift and reach that 30-degree angle. Now let's try to pass the Duel 2 challenge in the B1 license. Fill up the rest of the bar on the first turn. Let's approach the next turn using Nitro. Use the Nitro early to gain speed while approaching the turn. You throw the kart much farther when you drift with Nitro. Compensate for this by starting your drift earlier so you don't hit the wall. This uphill section here slows you down. This is a good time to use Nitro. Try to get another Nitro on these next two turns. Let's use these two Nitros for this straight and the on-ramp section. We have no Nitro now after leaving the on-ramp. Let's try to drift on this straight section using the cut drift. For this drift, approach the wall at an angle first. To cut drift, hold the drift button while countersteering. Let's try some short drifts here to help fill the gauge a bit. Doing a lot of short drifts is useful to rack up drifts if you're trying to 3-star the challenge. Here, when you short drift one way, do it again but the other way to redirect the kart. On this sharp S-bend, approach it from the right side. The U-turn is coming up. Make sure to hold the drift button and direction to do a curvy drift. You go faster going downhill, so start the drift early on this last turn. And that's it for this video. I hope with these tips it'll be easier for you to get started playing KartRider. I'll finish the second lap using more advanced techniques.